Imagine having joints so flexible you could be a contortionist. But that same flexibility means you might dislocate your shoulder just reaching for a coffee mug. That's the reality for people living with Hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. And today we're diving into this often misunderstood condition.
You know what's fascinating about hEDS? The same genetic quirk that makes someone double-jointed enough to be a circus performer could also mean they need a wheelchair to safely get around their own home.
Exactly right. And here's something that might surprise people. Studies show it takes an average of 12 years for someone with hEDS to get properly diagnosed. That's over a decade of people being told they're either making it up or just being dramatic about their pain.
That's such a long time to go without answers. What makes diagnosis so challenging?
Well, here's the thing. Unlike many genetic conditions, there's no simple blood test for hEDS. Doctors have to piece together this complex puzzle of symptoms, and many physicians have never even heard of it during their medical training. Recent studies suggest that as many as 1 in 5,000 people might have some form of hEDS. But experts believe it's actually much more common because it's so underdiagnosed.
The impact on daily life must be enormous. I mean, we're talking about a condition that affects literally every part of the body.
Oh, absolutely. And here's what's really mind-blowing. About 80% of people with hEDS experience chronic pain daily. Think about that. These folks wake up every morning never knowing which joints might decide to give out that day. Their skin is so fragile that they can get serious wounds from minor bumps. And get this, many of them can't even sit in a regular chair for more than 30 minutes without their hips or spine causing problems.
And it's not just the obvious physical symptoms, right? I've heard there are all sorts of unexpected complications.
That's right. We're talking about issues that most people would never connect to a joint problem. Like, did you know that about 75% of people with hEDS have some form of dysautonomia? That means their autonomic nervous system doesn't work properly, so things like heart rate, blood pressure, and digestion go haywire. Some people literally faint just from standing up too quickly.
The medical costs must be astronomical. How do people manage?
The financial burden is staggering. Recent surveys show that families affected by hEDS spend an average of $15,000 per year out of pocket on medical expenses alone. That doesn't even count lost wages or the cost of modifying their homes and vehicles to accommodate their needs.
Speaking of accommodation, I understand pregnancy can be particularly challenging for women with hEDS.
Oh man, the pregnancy statistics are sobering. Women with hEDS have a 50% higher risk of complications during pregnancy. Their joints become even more unstable thanks to the hormone relaxin, and they're at increased risk for things like premature labor and postpartum hemorrhage. Plus, they're facing that gut-wrenching knowledge that their child has a 50% chance of inheriting the condition.
That must create some really complex emotions around family planning.
You know what's interesting? Despite all these challenges, many people with hEDS develop incredible resilience and problem-solving skills. They become experts at managing their condition, often knowing more about joint mechanics than some medical professionals. But here's the kicker. About 70% report experiencing anxiety or depression related to their condition, largely due to the constant uncertainty and lack of understanding from others.
The social impact. It must be significant too. How do you maintain relationships when your body is so unpredictable?
That's one of the most heartbreaking aspects. Studies show that people with chronic invisible illnesses like hEDS lose an average of 60% of their social connections within 5 years of symptom onset. They often can't commit to plans because they never know how they'll feel from one day to the next. And dating. Try explaining to a potential partner that you might need help getting dressed some days, or that you can't sit through a whole movie in a regular theater seat.
The healthcare system doesn't seem well equipped to handle such complex chronic conditions.
Well, here's a shocking statistic. A recent survey found that it takes an average of 8 different healthcare providers working together to properly manage hEDS. But most insurance systems aren't set up for that kind of coordinated care. And get this, only about 30% of pain management specialists report feeling confident treating EDS-related pain.
Looking toward the future, what gives the hEDS community hope?
There are some promising developments. Research funding for EDS has increased by 300% in the last 5 years. New genetic studies are underway that might help us understand why the condition affects people so differently. But perhaps most importantly, social media has helped create this incredible support network. People with hEDS are finding their voices, sharing their stories, and advocating for better understanding and care.
This truly highlights the critical importance of engaging in these discussions. If only it was easier for people to grasp what wasn't happening to them. Just because someone isn't showing it physically doesn't mean there isn't something profound happening under that tough shell they have built. Because at the end of the day, understanding and awareness are the first steps toward better support and care.
Exactly. These folks might look fine on the outside, but they're fighting battles most of us can't even imagine. And they deserve to be heard, understood, and supported. That's all the time we have for today, folks. But this is merely a scratch into the depth of hEDS and its various manifestations. Please, even if you don't think you have the condition, if this brought you any insight, visit resources like the Ehlers-Danlos Society website to find out how complex and demoralizing living with this condition can be. And in general, remember to be kind to everyone. You never know what's happening inside.